Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. We're looking forward to hear about what NATO has been up to when it comes to both international and national cybersecurity. And our guest today, Koenraad Gijsbers, is, in my mind, probably the best person in NATO to deliver that picture, because although he is now heading the NATO Communications and Information Agency, which sort of works on the technical side of developing capabilities and assisting nations in doing the same, then his background really goes to very different aspects of cybersecurity, both in NATO, where he was my mentor in my previous position at the NATO Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, and in helping us in Estonia figure out how to set up a center that really provides or adds value to NATO's capabilities. And then, very importantly, in his own country, in the Netherlands, where he has really worked, I would say, through nitty-gritty of setting up cyber capabilities and relevant, not just technical, but also policy and strategic threats. So without any further, I will just give it over to Koen for him to give us some sort of update of NATO. I hope also a bit of how NATO has come to its point of growing cyber capabilities and the ability to not just do it for the organization, but do it for the allies. Thank you.
I think, Anneke, you give me too much credit. It's, no, I'm happy to be here. It's and to discuss a little bit, where NATO and the nations is going. And it's clear that there might be a perception that not too much is happening. It's and I hope to convince you that that is actually not correct. It's, but on the other hand, we also need to recognize that NATO will, if you look at the internet and on the hackers' sites and whatever, you see that many people think that NATO is or has to be, the overall overarching cyber, guru that runs all the activities in the cyber domain. That's not the case, and it will never be the case. Because it's clearly that cyber is being seen as a national responsibility. It's and NATO, of course, has a responsibility to defend its own networks, but also stimulate the building of capacity in nations and in member nations, but also even in partner nations. It's and basically help out when there is an agreement to do that. Yeah, because NATO is 28 nations that do something together in consensus. It's and the fact that I'm representing an agency, it's that basically now runs all IT for NATO. NATO used to have basically 5 different organizations to run the IT capabilities. It's now it's 1, and it is quite simple that this makes our life more easy. But on the other hand, we operate under the responsibility of those 28 nations and using basically their money to do that. It's so what I would like to do is basically discuss progress in 4 areas. First of all, strategy and governance. Secondly, organization and structure. Then technology. And lastly, collaboration. So how we basically see the collaboration with the different actors. It's so it's clear that NATO will not be the global cyber force. It has no intent to do that. It's but I must say that NATO can and does lead by example. It's and it is important that you have your own house on order. And use that knowledge and capacity that you have in order to stimulate others to come to the same level, understanding that there are of course nations that are at a higher level. It's there's a huge difference in cyber activity in the different member states. It's if we look to the day-to-day threat, we see basically 3 main vectors. It's which everybody sees. I think it's It is the the ever increasing use of malware. It's the spam, the increase, 35 increase of malware all over the place. We see that. NATO is actually running networks connecting more than 50 different locations throughout the US and Europe. So we have quite some visibility of what's going on. The second one, of course, is targeted attacks against NATO. It's from hostile nations, organizations, people that want to know what we're doing. It's combining social engineering with zero-day exploits. It's aiming at stealing sensitive political material. It's I must say that and this is open information, we experience around 30 serious attempts per month. It's and I think in the past some have been successful, but not always against NATO's networks, because there are quite some organizations that have NATO in their name but are not NATO. It's just an example, the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, which is not a NATO organization. It's their website was actually hacked, and of course for us that's an issue because it is immediately reputation damage, but we have no control over that organization. It's so it's not always NATO what you see if something happens. We see of course the emergence of more sophisticated, highly sophisticated malware. And I think it is a matter of time that we will be able to face with that on our networks. It's going to happen. And we're preparing ourselves for that. Then, of course, the third one is the hacktivism. It's and you can say that is perhaps not serious, but what is serious about this is that it's so huge, and being an organization that represents a very high level of security and a security organization by itself, of course, hacktivists have interest in to see how good we are. It's so we face a lot of that activity, and at this moment, actually, and this is also on the internet, there is there is an exercise, Steadfast Jazz, and immediately you see that anonymous Ukraine, in this case, is getting active in order to make their point. It's that they're basically against NATO, but also against the EU and Russia. It's and want to be independent. It's so there is always this relationship with activity on the political or operational side with hacktivist activity that is happening at the same time, and of course impacting our day-to-day life. The result of that, of course, is that the fact that there are so many of those is really becoming an issue, and that is why we are increasing our capacity, and of course we do something related to when those exercises are there, that we make sure that we are basically prepared for those activities. So progress on strategy and governance. It's I can say NATO doesn't lack attention of the highest level leadership. Every summit and ministerial, cyber is on the agenda since 2002. It's while in many companies, it has not perhaps reached the CEO level or the board level. In NATO, that's the case since 2002, and I think that's good because there is a need for political debate on priorities, on the level of the strategy that we need to develop, etc. And if you see that in the summit in Chicago, the last one, it was really recognized that it is important to finance those activities and give it priority. It's that to partner with other international organizations like the United Nations, European Union, and the OSCE, to integrate cyber defense measures in the alliance structures and procedures, but also in stimulating nations through the defense planning process in order to get to a higher standard on the cyber activities. It's and if we look at the last ministerial last month, it's really clear that the first priority of NATO will remain on the cyber area, will remain the defense of the own networks. That is the number one. But secondly, is to upgrade the ability to protect the networks against the fast evolving threat. And actually we are doing a lot of this activity. We have basically connected all the networks on the central control center, and we will continue to increase the capacity and the capability of our defenses. But also that cyber defense is and remains a national responsibility. That is quite clear. However, NATO can and should play a role to facilitate the development of strong national cyber defense capabilities. That is a role that NATO really has. And I can give you some examples. First of all, by setting out what capabilities nations need, and that's where we use the defense planning process in order to give guidance on those capabilities. By promoting the ability to work and communicate together. It's training, education, where the collaboration in this area is something that NATO will develop further, using national capacity as well as NATO capacity to basically increase the quality of and the knowledge of people at different levels, including the leadership. By sharing information and best practice, it's amongst allies, and there are some projects and programs where we stimulate to do that. And lastly, by helping to develop capabilities together as opposed to everybody on its own. And I'll say something about that more later. It's clear that developing capabilities at 28, so with all NATO nations, is very difficult. But what you see happening now is that groups of nations come together and work with my agency in order to develop capability for those nations. And that can lead then also to standards that can be used for others. So that is basically from a policy and strategic perspective the developments that is going on, supported at the highest political levels. Now, if you look at governance, NATO over the last 10 years, and I think in most nations as well, it was kind of a bit of everybody wants to do something. So what NATO has done is really made a clear division of responsibilities between the different organizations and is implementing that. And first of all, on the policy side, it is now clearly a responsibility for the Defense Policy and Planning Committee. They are in the lead of that. The technical authority is the Command and Control Board. The security investigation and accreditation is a responsibility of the Security Committee, which is all at 28. And basically, I am the executive authority and my agency, and it's in my task to operate and defend NATO networks, but under the governance of those three boards. And that clarity is actually important if you want to make steps forward. If we look at within the staffs, you might be aware of the existence of the Cyber Defense Management Board. That is basically bringing all the generals and assistant secretary generals together to discuss the cyber activity and bring coherence in that. That board is clearly active, not only in the design of policies, but also in the monitoring of execution and even in defensive action when that's needed. So they do strategic planning, ensuring the synergies within the alliance. They are the senior coordinating body for planning and initiating cyber defense activities in times of major crisis. It's so that we give it the right attention. And lastly, they coordinate and mobilize the cyber defense support for allies and assistance of allies on request, and that will be done on a case-by-case basis. It's because in NATO there is this is a discussion point. How far the responsibility of NATO goes to support individual allies when they're under attack. So technology. It's clear that it's important to make sure that we increase the capacity because the threat is increasing. And this threat is also changing from a technology perspective. NATO had this important program, NSERC FOC, and FOC means full operational capability. And I can tell you there will never be FOC. It's a wrong name, because this is an evolving thing, and there is now a good understanding that you cannot set a target and say, hey, we're done. You're never done. And this needs to develop further. But that project is going very well. We have basically upgraded everything, connected everything, and still are improving it further at this moment with an online forensics capability, online vulnerability assessment tools, and full packet capture tools in order to really have a good understanding of what is going on. And then basically link all the NATO locations together from a single enterprise. So there is, it has been a major step forward, and I think the fact that we have now one agency with one authority that controls that is really important to, make those steps. In the past, of course, with all those different organizations, you had someone who designed something and then he threw it over the fence to someone else who had to run it, and then someone else had to do something. That's over. That is increasing the capacity significantly. Furthermore, there is now a cyber threat assessment cell at the NATO headquarters. And that is where the political debate and the sharing with the nations on the threat assessment is happening, which is quite important. And we see this really as a first phase. We're discussing now with the nations how this should go further, and we're thinking about dynamic risk management tools that basically are important to further develop, but also capability to provide commanders with clear situation awareness on the networks they use. And now it's very centralized, and the political arena is served quite well. But we need to bring this to the field. It's had the knowledge that about the networks. And lastly, I think and it's not needed. We're working on that. Is basically have a full capability to alternate location for the facilities. Secondly. We are at the forefront now of really modernizing the whole IT environment of NATO. We call it IT modernization. It's because from a cyber perspective, perhaps it's good that we have a huge variety of different systems that basically are not built to work together. It's because they're all built from separate organizations. From a cyber perspective, that's quite interesting because it's very difficult to get someone on the left side because it doesn't work that well with the right side. But of course, from an operational perspective, we are improving that and implementing the newest technology, including cloud-based technology in the private cloud environment. We will not go on the public cloud with secure information. Of course, that if you do that, it brings a challenge that you need to incorporate in that environment of insider threat, of other elements of the sharing goes better, but the risk increases as well. So you need to, if you work that direction, and we're working closely with partners that has done this before, in order to reduce the risk of this, better sharing in the environment, and that balance, of course, is very, very important. What you also see on the technical side is that there is quite some interest of nations and partners in what we are doing, what we have built. And just an example, the last year we had more than almost 600 visitors from NATO nations, partners, industry, to look at what we're doing and to see if that could be useful for them as well. And we have our think tank, the technical think tank, basically is working the next steps, like the impacts of cloud computing, virtualization, but also mobility. And mobility is there are two things that make a military organization, I think, different than the industry, and that is, the first one is, of course, mobility, because we need to operate where, everywhere, anytime, any place, without having internet available. It's so we need to bring that. So that is an important part of it. It means that we have less bandwidth than normally people have. And the second element is, of course, the security. It's those are two elements that are very high on our activity list on the technical side, and our research and development is really focusing on those areas. Then people and organization. It's it is very important, to my opinion, that knowledge of staff, getting people understanding the right activities, but also organizing the people in a way that we can better defend ourselves and help nations to operate, is something that has a lot of interest. Just an example, on the operational side of the house, NATO has now what we call the CCOMC, which is the Comprehensive Operations Management Center in SHAPE, where SACUR basically leads his operations. And in that CCOMC is the Operational Cyber Center. It basically translates the technical data into operational activity and shares that with operational commanders, in Afghanistan, in south of Turkey, etc. And it's important that we are not focusing our organizations mainly on the technical side, but really link it to both the operational and the political environment. Which are both very relevant to what we do. If we look at the agency itself, we are focusing on research and development, of course, on capability development, and that is where we are working with nations to improve their capability, mainly on operations, but also, of course, in audit and compliance, because that is a very important step in an organization that is basically in 51 places from the US to Afghanistan, basically. It's if we look at the training aspect of this, NATO, we collaborate very closely, of course, with the NATO Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, which is formally not a NATO organization, but accredited by NATO. But they have a lot of knowledge, and we use that knowledge very well. But also, we, as an agency, have a NATO school that will, the NATO CIS school, will be the CIS and Cyber School, and that will move, and that was a political decision, to Portugal. Portugal has taken on this activity to basically start a multinational program on cyber training. And they will leverage on that school, get partners in other nations in to develop that training activity further. And that will mainly be focused on modern training, so not only going into a classroom, but basically, distributed training where we leverage the capacity of nations and of NATO, and bring the knowledge of the different organizations together. And lastly, and I think perhaps most importantly, is collaboration. So what are the principles for collaboration in NATO? First of all, that there is a non-duplication of efforts and capacity development, capability development. So if someone in NATO does it, then there is no need that NATO will also do it, because we can make use of that capacity. If, of course, that nation wants to share it. The second one is timely information sharing on situation awareness and early warning. That is a principle that is very important in the collaboration. With the aim, of course, to secure a more global, secure cyberspace. That is an important element for NATO, and it's stated in its policy. And we are engaging in our collaboration not only with NATO nations, but also with partner nations, with international organizations, but also with the private sector and academia. And actually, we just signed an MOU with industry in order to share data, and not technical data, but basically the sort of that industry is sharing with us, the raw cyber data, to really understand how we can both improve our capacity. And of course NATO will work in that collaboration and does work with the European Union, the Council of Europe, UN, OEC, Interpol, Europol. And the fact that we are in The Hague is actually quite interesting, because in The Hague we have now the Cyber Center of Europol under development. It's and you know, that's the proximity is important there. If we look at facilitating cooperation with nations, you know, I stated that at 28 that is always very difficult. It's but smaller groups of nations. The SecGen, the Secretary General, calls that smart defense. It's making best use of what's available in the different nations, but leveraging then the knowledge that NATO has is something that is really you know, working out well also in the cyber space. It is a choice for the nations whether they want to collaborate. It's and we are running at the moment a multinational cyber defense capability development program with 5 nations. We are hosting that as an agency, basically, using the knowledge that we have developed. It's under the lead of Canada. It's the Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, and Romania is participating there. And they're looking at you know, some technical capabilities about information sharing, about cyber situation awareness, and about sharing of sensor data in federated networks. If you have different networks, can the sensors work together to get a better view? It's and that is what is being developed by those nations. And at the moment, there are at least, I think, 5 or 6 nations in a row that want to participate, because this is really, you know, you can really increase the speed in developing capabilities and get the economies of force if you do that together in those smaller groups. This program started half a year ago, and the initial plan is to work for 3 years together. It's and you know, I really believe that this is the way forward in capability development, finding groups of nations with the same interest, and then leveraging the knowledge that is available, and basically building capacity and capability at lower cost. There are some other projects that have interest in the smart defense arena. One is the malware information sharing platform. It's and the other one is basically based on what I said with Portugal on the training activity. We are always also doing. We're running at the moment a pilot, web-based pilot, to share forensic analysis reports among nations, which, of course, I think is helping us to improve our defenses. And lastly, we are, of course, supporting exercises. Cyber exercises are very important in order to get people on the same sheet of music. An important one is going to happen shortly, which is the Cyber Coalition. That's an annual exercise, not only at the technical but also at the political level. It's with the involvement of NATO allies, partners, but also industry. It's and it is basically bringing us together, you know, to train as we fight. But there are other exercises. A good example is Lock Shield, which is a technical exercise. It's basically attack and defense, where the Cyber Defense Center of Excellence basically challenges, you know, other teams to defend themselves. And I'm pretty proud that actually the exercise of this year was won by my agency. It's which shows that at least we, you know, we have the knowledge and capacity in house to defend ourselves very, very, very well. So let me conclude. It's you know, NATO is not advertising this too much, and we think we have to play a modest role. It is important that. And that is why external spectators who might expect, you know, a lot of activity on the NATO side do not see too many, and might say, you know, not a lot is going on. But I can assure you that actually, you know, quite a lot is going on to improve the capacity and to help nations to build up their knowledge and capacity in order to make sure that we as an alliance are able to defend ourselves, firstly, but secondly to operate in the and execute our tasks as the public expects we do. And you know, I think that is happening. in the framework of those 28 nations that work together. And it's very clear that, in a consensus building environment, getting a decision at 28 is difficult. But once you have one, it is very strong. It's because you have the support of those 28 nations to move further. And I'm happy to answer any question that you might have. It's on the development of NATO. It's I think NATO is growing its capacity and capability, but within the rules and boundaries the nations set for us. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Koen. I open it up for questions in a second. I have actually two on my own.
Oops.
And
those are the most difficult questions.
well, one thing I just know that it's not just in your current capacity, but also back in your Dutch days, you have been working on integrating the private sector in defense capabilities. And so my question is, what's your experience in terms of public-private partnerships? How relevant really are private contributions to defense capabilities, and how easy really it is to engage private sector in this? So that would be my first question. And then second is going back to NATO as 28. Because one thing that intrigues me is you probably see in developing an organizational approach to it how different really are the approaches of nations to a cyber defense organization as such. So we see models such as co-locating cyber capabilities with Intel. We also see models where nations are developing their cyber capabilities on top of former CNO capabilities. So do you see a pattern there, or maybe you don't see a pattern there, but you would like to see a pattern there? So what are your observations on those two things?
Okay. Now, first of all, the private sector. It's NATO's philosophy is that we basically don't build our own things. We use the nation's industry to help us build capacity. And that is important because all those nations donate money they put money in the pot, and they want to see something back to go to their own nation. We have competition there. It's a very fair competition. It's being the acquisition authority. That is for me the most important part, is that I'm unbiased, because that's the only way we can survive in this environment of 28. It's and that everybody has the same chance of getting work from NATO. It's so when we develop capability, we in principle use industry to do that. And there is a lot of knowledge in industry, but we also must conclude not all the knowledge is available in industry. It's and that is why I think you need to find in this working with industry a good balance of what you want to do on your own, the knowledge that you need to have yourself in order to work with those industries to develop a capability. And in the past, you've seen a lot of activities in outsourcing or working with industry where government didn't have the knowledge themselves, and then basically you don't get what you want. It's so it is important that you maintain and you build up your knowledge and critical capacity in your own organization in order to be able to work with industry and get the best out of it. And not only the best in the sense of quality, but also in timeliness. It's because they like to delay now and then. It's and of course in price. It's it's really important that that building up that knowledge internally in governance, but also in other organizations that use industry, is very important. It's but I think it is important that we work together. It's that because we are not able, and we should not basically design all the practical things ourselves. That's what industry can do much better. It's what another benefit of industry is that they can bring best practice from other sectors. It's into the activities that we do, from the finance sector, from the because there is a lot of practical activity that that is happening in other sectors that can be relevant for industry. Where defense in the past was leading basically the innovation in technology, that's not anymore the case. It's clearly that the companies, the service providers, the fact that every individual at home has smartphone technology, etc., that is driving the speed of innovation in NATO very much. But at the same time, you cannot be dependent, to my opinion, and basically let industry do everything without having the knowledge yourself. My agency is actually quite lucky that we have a very strong workforce. I think we have the best engineers on our side in order to play that role that we need to play. Now, your other question is, do I see a pattern how basically cyber is organized in the different nations? Because you see different models. You have nations that really put it in the intelligence environment. And other nations that basically make a distinction between intelligence and operations. I personally favor that last model. It's because sharing operational data is much easier if you do it, from an operational perspective or from a technical perspective, than do it from the intelligence perspective. But there is no pattern, to be honest. It's at least I don't see it. I see nations still have make their own choices there, which is of course the right of that nation, but it doesn't always make sharing easy, because intelligence communities have different methodology of sharing intelligence than we do at the operational, at the technical level.
Thank you. And then after being rude to use my chair's prerogative, I now honestly open it up for any questions. And I spotted one there, and you're next. Yep. Please.
You mentioned referring to different standards. There is, let's say in the industry sector, the challenge between meeting compliance and regulatory obligations, sometimes without doing the risk assessments, because you could have compliance without good security and vice versa. But what are some of the international standards that you're looking at? I presume you're kind of purple in that regard.
Now, what we try to, this is a very fast evolving environment from a technical perspective. And if you look at the tradition, how NATO worked with standards, we have this concept of STANAGs, Standard NATO Agreements, that was developed in basically in the 60s in order to get all nations to be able to work together. You had, for example, a STANAG on how to put gas in an aircraft, because the nozzle should fit on the other side. It's the STANAG process is perhaps not the best process to get standards applied when technology is evolving very fast, because you need all kinds of committees in order to get to an agreement what that standard is, and then you say yes, this is it. So what we basically try to do is applying best industry practice. It's and then identifying, and that is what the C3 board is doing, the Command and Control and Consultation Board, and then identifying those that are relevant to our activities and declaring that is the standard. And as an agency, we use those. But it's clear that the standards go, rather quickly. It's so using the traditional model then to basically get that standard, fixed for a long time is not always the best thing. There are areas where it is actually, where in communication, for example, with aircraft, those standards are there and they last, and then we make improvements of the standards throughout the development of the technology. But the difficulty here is really the quickly evolving technology, and I believe following what industry does is not always easy, because sometimes whether it becomes the standard or not. It's this is what you know as well. Yeah? If you have an iPhone and you want to connect it to a Microsoft solution, it's not always that easy. It's so that is the challenge that we face as well, of course.
Yeah, there's a difference between technology standards and the single management-oriented standards.
Mhm.
Do you look at some
Yeah.
of those management ones?
Absolutely. It's from an IT perspective, we implement ITIL for example. The ITIL solutions, which include all the the management, the governing activities of IT and IT security.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, building on your question, Anakin, how do you see cyber protection and posture evolving when in the future we may have to integrate in potentially systems like Chinese military defense that Turkey may or may not choose, and integrating in systems from nations that maybe we wouldn't have had to deal with in the past?
It's an interesting question. It's from an agency perspective, it is not that difficult because the rules that we apply are very simple. We can only use industry of NATO countries. It's unless we work with a partner country, then that partner country can bring its own industry. It's so if a nation chooses to not follow that rule, I think it will be quite difficult to link systems. It's because the rules are there for a good reason, and at the end, of course, it is a political decision whether we're going to do that, and it's my responsibility to explain the impact of it. But it is, of course, the responsibility of each nation to make a choice what he wants to do. But the NATO perspective is very clear. Security is our most important element, and we apply our rule, which is that we basically work with with NATO, with industry of NATO nations.
General, I'm interested in your views on the sort of the legal, ethical, political angle of the recent announcement by our own Secretary of State in the House of a counter-strike capability in cyber.
The NATO position is very simple. It's NATO focuses on defensive activity. It's and if a nation wants to do something else, it's their responsibility. It's a simple answer. Yep.
Sure. Well, the question was partially answered, but just following up on Anakin's first question. If you look around NATO countries for capabilities that you need and you find the capabilities you're looking for just outside of NATO in a friendly partnered country, what is the mechanism for working with that, and do you then also run into political problems with another NATO country who may have a problem with the country outside of NATO?
No, that is a very good point. It's because NATO has a lot of partnerships.
Yeah.
Working with non-partners is no option. It's not going to happen. It's but working with partners can happen, and actually I have the authority to work with those partner nations. But for a partner, I have to go to the council. So the council has to tell me, yes, you can work with that partner. It's and I know that three partner nations might be interested in working on this cyber defense capability program, and this is well known. Finland is one. It's but I cannot directly tell Finland, yes, we can do this. So we go to the council. If the council most likely will say yes, but of course it's a political choice, and then we can work with that nation, and then even that nation on that project can bring its own industry. It's that is the mechanism.
Does the information sharing amongst allies include intelligence gathering and sharing? And is that something that NATO would also work with industry on?
I think you can better answer that question. No, it's the focus of what NATO is doing, of course, is that we work collectively, and that means that NATO is sharing, those also intelligence, not only cyber data but also intelligence. That's very important because you cannot run an operation without that. It's the interesting part is that NATO itself up to now does not have intelligence sensors. We are depending on what the nations bring. Which is not, it's not a problem. However, NATO has decided now, not with all 28 nations, but almost all 28 nations, to develop an own sensor platform, the Allied Ground Surveillance System, basically the Global Hawk, that NATO is now implementing. And that means that NATO has then also its own intelligence data that they can share with others. But sharing of intelligence data is basically on the forefront of what we do, and what my agency does. We build tools to do that online, live. It's an interesting program is the MAGIC program, where we basically build some kind of an cloud environment, private cloud environment, to share sensor data live, and that's implemented in Afghanistan. So you can basically ask for data that is developed by another nation's sensor, and you get it live, if that nation wants to share that data. Because at the end, it's up to the nations whether they want to share or not. And the mechanism we use is actually quite simple. Each nation has a box. It's a box you want to share and a box you don't want to share. And every nation can look in the share box. And there is much more in the share box than there is in the not share box, I can tell you.
It's Masato Kimura, Japanese journalist. If I may, I would like to have a journalistic question. So, in the old days, we have a question about Pentagon Papers about Vietnam War, but these days we see WikiLeaks and also Edward Snowden case, and so the secret is spread all over the world in a minute. And so Glenn Ward, who is a Guardian journalist, moved to outside to cooperate with eBay founder, and he insisted journalism is perfectly open, no secret. But old journalists said that journalists always think national interest and public interest. So sometimes they think it is necessary to postpone the publish. But new journalism said at once we should open everything. So what do you think about such kind of discussion these days?
I of course, as a private person, I think it is important that you, as a journalist, play your role and are able to share what you know. It is, of course, being a member of a security organization, you cannot always share everything. So what I'm telling today is everything you could have read somewhere in the press. It's because it is important, I think, that especially when you're a security organization, that you make it a little bit difficult for the opponents to find out how you operate and what you want to do and how you achieve that on the practical operational side. While on the policy side, of course, you have the same issues. And nations are going very often open with their ideas when they have an agreement of the ideas, but they don't want to share that knowledge when the ideas are not mature yet. That's always the balance you have to find. I think that NATO has not. First of all, NATO is really focusing on the defensive activity. That is our purpose, nothing else. It's helping nations doing that. But I'm not going to tell you in detail, how we do that. It's because that would make the life of those hackers too easy. You understand that balance. And that needs to be there, I think.
My name is Ahmet. I'm from Turkish Embassy. First of all, the decision on this Chinese system has not been made yet.
No, I don't.
It is just initial step, let's say. I have a question regarding what is the difference between incorporating this Chinese system into NATO or incorporating this Warsaw system pacts of Eastern European countries into NATO?
It's. I'm not sure because there are technical aspects and there are trust aspects. I can comment on the technical aspects. I don't know the system well enough to really understand what the technical issues would be. But of course there is a trust aspect, and the rule in NATO is very simple. NATO uses industries and can work with industries of NATO countries that they trust, because that is this. And the trust is not only being, trusting the company or the system, but also the fact that as a government you have influence on that activity. And that is not the case when it is a government, when it's an industry based in another country. But at the end, it is what I was saying before. It is a decision of individual member states. I think it will not be easy. I'm not saying from a political perspective to get an agreement of 28 to link that to the NATO system. But on the other side, on the Eastern European systems, what you see happening is that almost all Eastern European nations are replacing those systems with Western systems that are. But of course, you had this interim solution, and the interim solution, not everything was possible in connectivity. And that's why they're replacing it. It's with activity. You see that the F-16s are flying and used F-16s in Eastern Europe for a good reason.
Thank you. Over there.
Well, actually, I do have a question. Well, we haven't touched upon the recent developments, the Five Eyes and the rest, so to say. And I was wondering how that impacts your work at the moment, because I spoke to some people from the North Atlantic Council a couple of months ago when, the whole Snowden thing came up, and basically they said, well, we're way more reluctant now, obviously, to, share some of the information we might have. And I was wondering whether this already affects your work in a certain way.
Now, what I told you is that we have no lack of attention of the highest leadership to the cyber subject, which makes my work much easier. On the other hand, sometimes more difficult because we have to be in time and whatever. But it is NATO is when there are issues, it will be discussed immediately at the political level. Which I think is good, because that is where the governance should be. That is where I get my guidance from. I personally don't see it so much as an issue. I think it is helping us to get this subject at the right attention, having the right attention. And NATO is an organization where 28 nations have decided to do things together if they achieve consensus about it. It's a political process, and that is where the discussion has to be.
Yes.
I think my question probably follows in the same vein, and you may have already answered it. The term advanced persistent threats has come up, which seems to be a way to talk about some of the more difficult issues and maybe bring more awareness to that kind of activity. And also some of the countries have come up with guides or approaches to deal with the APT, equipping to core, and all sorts of different lists that are publicly available. I'm assuming that NATO would be such a country where the APT is discussed.
Now, we're not a country, but it's
Sorry,
not yet.
Those members would be discussing this
of course.
at great length. I guess that ties to because each of the communications and computers contain components that may come from a significant non-NATO member countries. So there seems to be a lot of rethinking about how to do so.
And the rethinking. Actually, I'm an operator. I'm not a technician. If you are an operator, then you don't expect the threat is only coming from the north or from the south or the east, wherever No, it's everywhere. And if your approach is that the enemy is already in, and you accept that, you get a different way of defense. And that is what happened. If you look at military history, It's warfare has always been something that is totally comprehensive and affecting all the elements of power. It's but all the elements of force as well. It's so it's conventional forces and irregular forces, and that's how we have learned to work in the colonial times, but even in the Cold War. It's to learn to deal with that. In the cyber area, it's not different. It's what I'm always saying is that the cyber warfare between brackets or operations, whatever you call it, uses all the rules that the principles of military operations and war that we have learned from Sun Tzu and Clausewitz and whatever. And if you apply those, then basically you can defend yourself pretty good.
I see no more questions. Oh, I do. Go ahead.
Just quickly on the sort of logistical aspect, can you maybe describe one issue in the U.S. cyber community is, government cyber community is the lack of capable engineers and so forth, and you see Xerian going to the Black Hat conference and so forth. So could you detail maybe you said you had strong engineers, and are you confident in your engineers? Are you having issues in terms of recruiting, in terms of sharing capable engineers between countries?
No, I must say we are very lucky. It's being an international organization following the certain tax rules. It's let's be fair. It's we're paying more than industry pays because it's tax free. We pay normal salaries, but they're tax free. So we can select. We really select. It's I get 400 people on one job. It's and then we select one. It's and then we have 2 or 3. When there's another job coming, we think, hey, that's interesting. It's so we are really very lucky being an international organization. It's but from a global perspective, I think this is first of all something to last. And if I were in a university or a college, I know where I would start, getting more activity done, because it is, or when you want to advise your son what he has to do to get work, this is an area where, at least for the next 10 years you will have work. It's because you see that everybody is dealing with the issues. Quite a lot of organizations, not defense organizations, but are behind. It's and basically have to come to grips with it. But we don't have that issue. It's we also have a rotational policy. I basically only give definite contracts. It's and that's for the reason of keeping the right knowledge in the organization. So and people know that it's you get 3 years, 6 years, and then you go do something else. Either you go back to the nation to help the nation to build the experience you build to help the nation out. It's but that rotational policy is helping us very much to maintain a relevant workforce. It's in this very quickly evolving environment.
Well, now I see no more questions. Well then, I guess I'm left to conclude, and it seems to me that what we've heard is an insider view on how an international organization is taking advantage of its advantages as an international organization, and then struggling with the deficiencies that the international organizations have in dealing with something that is highly political as an issue and then highly practical as a challenge. And you described the path that NATO has taken as modest and maybe somewhat even conservative, but I would say that to me it seems that under the circumstances this path or this progress has been consistent and smart indeed, and that's in my opinion a very good sign in contemporary approaches to cybersecurity. So I very much thank you for sharing those insights with us, and thanks for coming, and thanks everyone for joining us today.